Hello everyone and welcome to Music Theory with Gim. In this installment of Analyzing Harmony, we are going to delve into an excerpt of Edvard Grieg's Opus 12 No. 2, which is a lyric piece titled Waltz. We'll be investigating the first 18 measures of the piece, and since those 18 measures are repeated verbatim, we will, by default, have also investigated the harmony of the first 36 measures. Before we get into any music theory, however, let's prepare our ears by taking a listen to the music we'll be analyzing. So this piece is set in the tonality of A, and during the excerpt it is operating in the minor mode. In the first 10 measures of the piece, we are hearing a simple prolongation of the tonic area via mostly hearing the 1 chord, A minor, with the occasional 5/7 chord, E7, appearing in measures 4 and 8. When E7 is heard, however, it is heard above a tonic pedal, which, in addition to the overall context, causes the chord to be absorbed into the tonic domain, meaning we are not hearing a structural harmonic change of area from tonic to dominant back to tonic. Instead, we are simply remaining in the tonic area the entire time, with 5/7 simply expanding it. The main interest in these first 10 measures is the melody, which heavily utilizes the major 6th and 7th scale degrees. If you're into scales, this can be referred to as using either a mixed minor scale or the melodic minor scale, the latter of which would be the more common term these days. And even though we are not going to delve into the melodic content, it is worth pointing out that if you are under the impression that the melodic minor scale only ascends with the major 6th and 7th scale degrees, but must descend in another form, such as the natural minor scale, here is an example from the Romantic period showing otherwise. So the use of the descending melodic minor scale is not really a modern invention and has been around since at least the Baroque period. Anyways, with that said, let's move on to the next 8 measures, which are the real reason I selected this excerpt for an episode of Analyzing Harmony. In these measures, we hear an excellent example of harmonic prolongation via the sequential progression of descending thirds. The sequence begins at the flat 3 chord C major and descends through A minor, the 1, F major, the flat 6, and D minor 7, the 4/7. Following D minor 7, we proceed to B half diminished over F, the 2 half diminished 4/3, and then to E major, the 5, which is used to bring the first 18 measures to a close, creating a half cadence. It should be noted that despite D minor 7 to B half diminished forming a descending third root progression, the sequential progression ends at D minor 7. This is partly because these 8 measures are built on the theme type of a sentence. This is indicated by the repeating basic idea using the sequence model format, creating the presentation phrase, followed by the continuation phrase, which consists of the continuation function, partially indicated by the melodic fragmentation, and then the cadential function that, when initiated, effectively ends the prolonging sequential progression and then closes the sentence as a whole via the half cadence. And once we break down the harmony further, we'll come across additional reasons reinforcing this decision to state the sequential progression ends at D minor 7 rather than B half diminished. Anyways, knowing that we're hearing a sequential progression from C major to D minor 7, we can say that the structural progression is C major to D minor 7, with the interposing chords being prolongational. So rather than a simple motion of C major ascending by second to D minor 7, we hear that the ascending major second has been inverted to be a descending minor 7th and filled out incrementally with descending thirds, with said thirds also being harmonized as additional chords. This, of course, does not account for every harmony that appears in the actual music, but it does provide us the structural foundation and its first layer of embellishment. As a result, the chords that we are going to look at now can easily be understood as being an additional layer of embellishment, further prolonging the underlying structural progression of C major, D minor 7, B half diminished, and E major. So the next layer of harmony is the ascending fifth, or relative dominant, of each chord in the sequential progression. C major moves to G major, A minor to E minor, and F major to C major. These additional chords are used to expand the area of the chord preceding. Of course, it should be understood that by stating relative dominant, I am not implying that these are applied or secondary dominants. Those would certainly work here, but they are not necessary, especially since these chords are not structural but prolongational. Instead, relative dominant is simply referring to the fact that each chord is built from the fifth or dominant scale degree of the preceding chord and is used to again expand or prolong said chord. So instead of simply moving from C major to A minor, we now have a progression of C major, G major, A minor. With this use of relative dominance in mind, you can now see another reason why D minor 7 marks the end of the sequential progression. It is not followed by its chord of the ascending fifth, or relative dominant, which would be A minor, before moving onward to B half diminished. So with this third layer of harmony added, we now have a progression of C major, G major, A minor, E minor, F major, C major, D minor 7, B half diminished over F, and E major. Now that we have the relative dominant chords of the sequential progression, you'll see that we actually end up hearing C major ascend by step to D minor 7, which is the progression that is being prolonged to begin with. Though this does not always happen, it is surprisingly common in prolongational progressions to end up hearing in the end that which you are prolonging. Though this might seem confusing, we'll certainly be seeing more of this in future installments, and you'll come to understand over time how this is a very useful observation when analyzing harmony and how it functions. Anyways, at this point, there is only one more layer of embellishments that we'll be delving into. The first set of this layer occurs between C major to G major, as well as A minor to E minor. The reasons these additional embellishments do not occur between F major and C major has to do with the presence of melodic fragmentation. Before we go any further, I want to make note that all of these additional harmonies are strictly formed by ascending stepwise motion, and that really these moments are better explained as being a result of counterpoint. Because of this, I will not be labeling these chords on screen in the analysis, but I will mention what chords they appear to be forming. During C major in measure 11, we hear E and G ascend to F and G sharp, and then F sharp and A, while the outer voices, C and E, remain unchanged. These rising inner voices are part of a goal of motion meant to embellish the ascent of E and G to G and B, respectively. On beat 2, if we consider the inharmonic of G sharp, which is A flat, there is the pitch collection present of F minor major 7 over C, and on beat 3 we have what can be referred to as F sharp half diminished over C, which is used like a leading tone diminished chord relative to G major. Similarly, A minor to E minor is embellished with ascending stepwise motion, producing what can be referred to as D minor 7 over A on beat 2 of measure 13, and D sharp diminished 7 over A on beat 3, which, like F sharp half diminished over C, is a leading tone diminished chord of the relative dominant E minor. The next set of embellishments occurs in measure 17 and is slightly different than before. Here we have what can be referred to as D minor 7, A minor 7 over E, F major, and then again D minor 7. Now, if you recall, I previously stated that the relative dominant of D minor 7 does not appear, which is one reason why we would state that the sequential progression ends at D minor 7, yet we do have what looks like A minor 7 over E. Unlike the previous relative dominants, however, this supposed chord is strictly used as a passing 6/4 and has far less prominence than any of the others. As a result, it should not be considered to be of equal value structurally. As stated before, however, I do not view these as chords, but as byproducts of counterpoint. And notice that in this case, only the outer voices are moving and the inner voices remain static. Also, unlike measures 11 and 13, these embellishments are used to add intrigue within the chord D minor 7 and are not used as a means to lead into another chord. Now, if you choose to view these supposed chords as part of the harmonic progression, that's understandable, but again, I simply view them as a result of counterpoint. And if you are going to view them as part of the harmonic progression, I would strongly urge you to not overestimate the value of a leading tone diminished 7th chord or the half diminished chord. I would also urge you to not actually view what I refer to as F major as actually being F major. This is because the surrounding context will fill it in as being D minor 7 over F, even though D is not present on that particular beat. This last point regarding F major actually being D minor 7 over F is a very good example of why you need to listen to music and not just analyze based on what is on the page. Anyways, overall we have 4 different layers of harmonic development. The first layer is the structural progression of C major to D minor 7, B half diminished over F, and E major. The second layer embellishes the first with a sequential progression adding A minor and F major between C major and D minor 7. The third layer embellishes this sequential progression by adding the relative dominant chords of each chord within the prolonged sequence. And lastly, we have embellishments that enhance the movement from chords of the sequence to their relative dominant, as well as the final embellishments of D minor 7 that simply add intrigue to itself. Now that we can see and, more importantly, hear these layers, we are ready to take a listen to the original excerpt in full. Before we do so, remember that these 8 measures are preceded by a tonic prolongation occupying measures 1 through 10. For those of you that are patrons, you will have access to a PDF containing the analysis present in this video, and you will also gain access to additional commentary and analyses on this piece in the future. This will include not only thoughts on the harmony, but other elements as well. Of course, as my patrons, it is encouraged that should you happen to have any questions regarding this content or anything else regarding the piece, reach out to me and ask. For those of you that are not patrons but like to support my endeavors, be certain to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below, and share the video as often as you can. If you find yourself wanting to take your support to the next level, hop on over to patreon.com/gim and consider pledging some coin. If you are not a user of Patreon or simply want to make a single financial contribution, you can do so via PayPal, the link to which can be found in the description below. These videos take a lot of time and effort, so any support on your end is greatly appreciated. Either way, until next time, thank you for watching this episode of Music Theory with Gim.